So we are coming into the Sikh, which is the historic entrance to Petra. This is the highly defensible city because the main and almost nearly only entrance was through this guarded, becomes a slot canyon. It narrows as we walk through it. And why was it one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and today is one of UNESCO's World Heritage Sites? Well, the answer lies primarily in the ancient substance of frankincense. Yes, the demand for spices in the ancient world over 2,000 years ago, particularly by the Romans, drove the growth of the spice trade as well as the center of that trade, which happened to converge at the city of Petra. So if we go back to the time where these cities were growing, especially in the Greco-Roman world, where folks were living in closer and closer contexts, and there was just that everyday stench of life, whether it be refuse or animals, slaughterhouses, human waste, and also just the stink and sweat of living together in daily life. This drove a desire and a high demand for frankincense in particular, and to some degree myrrh. And these spices were only derived from the southern Arabian Peninsula, what would be Yemen today. And those spices then would have to pass north through the famous spice trade route until it got to the area in southern Jordan, which is Petra today, where those spice trade routes converge. One would head west to the port city of Gaza to go to the rest of the Mediterranean world, and one would go north through Damascus up into Asia and even Europe. And so the center of that trade was Petra. And this Arabian tribe known as the Nabateans rose to control as well as profit off of this trade for a few hundred years, starting around the 4th century before the Common Era and into even the 4th century of the Common Era. And so the Nabateans were not only highly skilled in profiting and managing this trade, but they were extremely skilled in stone carving and in water management, as well as developing some forms of agriculture in very arid environments. Welcome to Jordan. Welcome to Petra. Here you see behind me what has traditionally been called the treasury of the Khazneh. This is the first sight you see upon coming into Petra.
So amazing. Salam alaikum. كيف حالك? Okay, تمام. الحمد لله. Just talking to the policeman. We're gonna get a nice nice greeting from the police. So yeah, this is it. This is the highlight of your trip in one of the UNESCO's World Heritage Sites. So you have to come see this at some point. Police are walking by me. They're like, what is this girl? What is this weirdo doing?
Under the Nabateans, Petra flourished in the 1st century of the Common Era, or AD, and rapidly became a client state of the Roman Empire. However, Petra soon lost its independence to Rome in 106 AD due to the fact that Rome wanted to take advantage of its wealth. It continued to decline over the next number of centuries, mostly due to the fact that sea trade routes were emerging as alternatives. And finally, an earthquake in 363 destroyed many of its structures and led to its rapid downfall. By that point, in the Byzantine era, there had already been the presence of Christianity and several Christian churches built in the city, yet the city continued to decline, and by the early Islamic era, it was more or less abandoned, at least relatively unknown to the West, until it was encountered again in 1812 by a Swiss adventurer, Johann Ludwig Burckhardt.
So that's the Sikh, everyone. Amazing. Trying to keep the camera up high so that I don't. صور مشكلة؟
لا ما في مشكلة.
لا ما في. اوكي شكرا.
You're from وين؟
أمريكا.
أهلا وسهلا.
أهلا فيك.
تحكي عربي؟
لا شوي
شوي؟
شوي.
شو اسمك؟
معي أنا بفهم بس.
أيوة.
بس احكي اسمي أليسون. أليسون. شو
كم
اسمك؟
عمرك؟ بدر.
بدر. Okay. All right. You have lovely
كم
place.
عمرك؟ واو.
كتير.
كم يعني؟
كتير. Oh no. نسيت 40 5.
45.
سي.
العمر كله.
كيف بتقول بالعربي old؟
Beautiful.
شكرا. تبي تشرفنا؟ God love when you get hit on by the cops. And the first question they ask is, how old are you? That's one of the things I love in general about some aspects of Jordanian culture, is that they're very much just to the point. They don't beat around the bush, and they will ask you questions that culturally, at least in most parts of the US, would be super forbidden. So sometimes the first question you'll hear is like, how much do you make? What's your salary? And they will oftentimes insist until you tell them. or then like this, 2 cups, asking me how old I am right off the bat. Hello, what's your name? How old are you? So in any case, welcome to Jordan. I love it. Beautiful people. Such amazing friendliness and hospitality. Kind and giving. Oh my goodness, I hope you can hear those birds. Fantastic.
Today, this rose-red city, half as old as time, is far from lost to the rest of the world, and it has been since 1985 described by UNESCO as one of the most precious cultural properties of humans' cultural heritage. In fact, there were 1.1 million tourists that visited in 2019 prior to COVID 19, and it will be interesting to see the legacy of this city in the future.